The day I became the most despised neighbor in Willow Creek was the same day I turned the tables on Karen Marshall. She called 911 in a rage when her so-called master key failed to unlock my front door. What she didn't know was that my son, Ryan, was the 911 operator who picked up her call. With 20 years of legal experience and a network of fed-up neighbors behind me, I had every reason to fight back and the grit to see it through. If you're watching this while hiding from your own HOA nonsense, maybe sneaking a peek in your car to avoid another pointless meeting, drop a comment below telling me the pettiest rule your HOA enforces. I guarantee this story of Karen's epic meltdown and my son's perfect timing will keep you glued to your screen. If Karen Marshall's attempt to barge into my home with her fake master key went unchallenged, no resident in Willow Creek would feel safe behind their own doors, and my family's sanctuary would be shattered. This wasn't just about a key or some petty HOA power trip. It was about protecting my son Ryan's peace and stopping an HOA tyrant from turning our neighborhood into her personal fiefdom. After losing my wife 2 years ago, our home became the one place where Ryan and I could rebuild our lives. Karen's invasion threatened to strip that away, leaving us exposed to her whims and her vendettas. I couldn't let that happen. Not for Ryan, not for our neighbors, not for the community we'd fought to call home. This was a line in the sand, and I was ready to hold. I tweeted him, "My name is Daniel Harper," and until 6 months ago, I thought I'd found the perfect place to rebuild my life. I'm a retired lawyer, having spent 2 decades navigating corporate disputes and building a comfortable nest egg that let me step away from the courtroom at 45. But life doesn't care about your plans or your savings. 3 years ago, my wife, Emily, passed away after a brutal fight with leukemia, leaving me to raise our son, Ryan, alone. He was just 15 then, a quiet kid with his mother's kind eyes and a stubborn streak I like to think he got from me. Now 18, Ryan's found his own path as a 911 operator, a job he takes seriously, saying it's his way of giving back. Watching him handle those high-stakes calls with calm, focus, makes me prouder than any case I ever won. After Emily's death, Ryan and I needed a fresh start, somewhere we could heal and make new memories. That's why I chose Willow Creek, a picturesque suburban community with tree-lined streets, top-rated schools, and a reputation for family-friendly living. The realtor raved about its charm: cozy cul-de-sacs, kids riding bikes, neighbors waving from porches. It sounded like the kind of place where Ryan could finish high school in peace, and I could find some quiet after years of grief. The realtor mentioned the homeowners association, but brushed it off as routine, rules about fence heights and lawn care, nothing out of the ordinary. Karen Marshall, the HOA president, keeps things orderly, she said with a tight smile. I should have caught the hesitation in her voice, but I was too focused on the promise of a new beginning. I'd dealt with tough opponents in courtrooms. How bad could one neighborhood busybody be? So I signed the papers, and Ryan and I moved into our 2-story home on Maple Lane, complete with a small backyard where I pictured us grilling on summer evenings. It felt like a chance to rebuild what cancer had taken from us. Little did I know, Karen Marshall wasn't just a stickler for rules. She was a one-woman dictatorship, and her obsession with control would soon target the one thing I'd sworn to protect. My son's sense of safety in our own home. It was a crisp Saturday morning in Willow Creek, the kind where the sun filters through the maples and you can almost forget the weight of the world. Ryan was upstairs, still half asleep after a late shift at the 911 dispatch center, and I was sipping coffee in the kitchen, reviewing some old case files for nostalgia's sake. The peace shattered with a sharp, insistent knock at the front door, more like a demand than a request. I opened it to find Karen Marshall, the HOA president, standing on my porch, her lips pursed in a thin line of disapproval. She was in her early 60s, dressed in a pristine blazer and skirt combo that screamed, "I'm here on official business." Her blonde bob was immaculate, and she clutched a clipboard like it was a badge of absolute authority, her pen tapping with the impatience of someone used to getting her way. "Mr. Harper," she began, her voice dripping with condescension, "I'm here to conduct an inspection for HOA violations. We've had complaints about your property." I blinked, caught off guard. "Complaints? About what?" My lawn was mowed, my mailbox was regulation beige, and I hadn't even hung Christmas lights yet. Karen's eyes narrowed, as if my question was an affront. "Unapproved modifications to your front door lock," she said, holding up her tablet to show a blurry photo of my door, clearly taken from the street. "The HOA has a master key for compliance checks, and I'm authorized to enter." She dangled a shiny key from a lanyard, her smug, "I'm in charge" attitude practically radiating. My stomach twisted. Ryan was upstairs, likely still in his room, and the idea of this woman forcing her way into our home, our sanctuary, sent a surge of protective anger through me. "You're not coming inside," I said, keeping my voice steady but firm, years of courtroom practice kicking in. "I wasn't notified about any inspection, and I'd like to see the regulation that gives you access to my home." Karen's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Harper, the HOA bylaws grant us the right to ensure community standards are met. Perhaps you didn't read the fine print when you moved in. New residents often overlook the rules." Her tone carried a thinly veiled jab, implying I was some outsider who didn't belong in her pristine Willow Creek. She stepped forward, key in hand, as if she'd walk right past me. "This is a violation," she added, scribbling on her clipboard. "Refusal to comply carries a $300 fine, and I'll have to escalate this to the board." I felt my jaw clench, my heart racing at the thought of Ryan coming downstairs to find this stranger in our home, our safe space after years of loss. "You're not stepping foot inside without a warrant," I said, blocking the doorway. "Send me the fine and the bylaws. We'll discuss this later." Karen's face flushed, unaccustomed to resistance. "You're making a mistake," she snapped, jabbing her pen toward me. "This community has standards, and I won't let people like you disrupt them." "The people like you," hit like a slap, her elitism clear as day. As she turned to leave, her heels clicking on the pavement, I heard Ryan's footsteps on the stairs. "Dad, who was that?" he asked, his voice groggy but tinged with worry. I forced a calm smile, though my blood was boiling. "Just someone who thinks they own the place, kiddo," I said, ruffling his hair. But as I closed the door, Karen's master key and her entitled attitude burned in my mind. This wasn't just a power trip, it was an invasion, and I wasn't about to let her threaten the home I'd built for my son. That morning, I knew I had to fight back, not just for us, but for every neighbor she'd bullied with her clipboard and her so-called authority. That afternoon, after Karen Marshall's brazen attempt to invade my home with her so-called master key, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, determined to get answers. As a retired lawyer, I'd spent years unraveling complex corporate schemes, and this felt like a case I couldn't ignore. I started with the Willow Creek HOA bylaws, a dense 50-page document buried on the community website. I scoured every section, searching for anything about inspections or master keys. Nothing. Not a single clause granted the HOA authority to enter private homes unannounced, let alone with a universal key. The closest rule mentioned exterior compliance checks, with 48-hour notice, and even that required homeowner consent. Karen's master key was a fiction, a power grab with no legal grounding. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just overreach, it was a deliberate lie, and I needed to know why. I reached out to Ellen Carter, a retired paralegal who lived 2 streets over on Cedar Drive. Ellen was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her late 60s who'd helped me with some paperwork when I moved in. Over coffee at her cozy, book-filled home, she shook her head when I described Karen's stunt. "That woman's been terrorizing Willow Creek for years," Ellen said, pulling a thick folder from her desk labeled HOA Complaints. She'd kept meticulous notes from HOA meetings documenting Karen's tactics. "She targets new residents," Ellen explained, showing me a list of violation notices. Fines for things like non-compliant shutters or unauthorized garden gnomes. Petty stuff long-term residents get away with. The pattern was clear. New families, especially those who didn't fit Karen's vision of Willow Creek's elite, faced relentless scrutiny. Ellen's notes also hinted at financial irregularities. Large HOA payments to a landscaping company owned by Karen's cousin, with no competitive bids. My next ally was Marcus Reed, a local historian and lifelong Willow Creek resident who ran the community library's archives. I met him in the library's quiet back room, where he spread out old property records and HOA minutes on a mahogany table. Marcus, a soft-spoken man in his 70s with a knack for uncovering secrets, pointed to a 2018 HOA meeting transcript. Karen pushed through a rule change to streamline compliance, he said, his finger tracing a highlighted passage. It was vague enough to let her justify almost anything, like those inspections. He then showed me property transfer records, 5 homes sold in the past 3 years, all at below market rates after waves of HOA fines, and all snapped up by Willow Properties LLC. A quick search revealed the LLC was registered to Karen's sister-in-law. The pieces clicked. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was weaponizing them to pressure residents into selling cheap, feeding her real estate empire. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Ellen connected me to a Dropbox folder with HOA financials she'd obtained through a public records request. The numbers didn't add up. $60,000 for community signage upgrades that amounted to 3 new welcome signs, $25,000 for consulting fees to a firm with no online presence, and suspiciously high maintenance costs for a clubhouse Karen's friends used for private parties. Meanwhile, basic repairs like fixing the playground swings were repeatedly tabled for budget reasons. Marcus shared a rumor he'd heard at a town council meeting. Karen was eyeing a vacant lot near the community entrance for a luxury condo project, but she needed more properties under her control to secure investor backing. Her inspections were a tactic to intimidate residents into compliance or force them out, clearing the way for her deals. By now, my anger was tempered with focus. Karen's scheme wasn't just about control. It was about profit, and she was using the HOA as her personal ATM. I thought of Ryan, who'd come home that evening still shaken by Karen's visit, asking if we'd have to move. Not a chance. I told him, my resolve hardening. But I needed more than documents to stop her. Ellen and Marcus agreed. We had to expose Karen's agenda without tipping her off. As I left Marcus's library, he handed me a faded photo of Willow Creek's original community charter, signed by its founders. This place was built on fairness, he said quietly. Karen's forgotten that. I nodded, clutching the photo. Karen thought she held all the cards with her clipboard and fake key, but I was about to show her the game was far from over. With Karen Marshall's scheme laid bare, I knew exposing her master key stunt required more than just evidence. It needed precision. As a retired lawyer, I'd spent years crafting strategies to dismantle opponents in court, and Karen was no different. My plan hinged on her arrogance. She'd overstep again, and when she did, my son Ryan's role as a 911 operator would turn her mistake into her undoing. I gathered Ellen Carter and Marcus Reed at my dining table, our makeshift war room, to map it out. Ellen, with her paralegal instincts, had already cross-referenced the HOA bylaws with state property laws, confirming Karen's master key claim was not only baseless, but potentially illegal under privacy statutes. She's trespassing the moment she tries to use it, Ellen said, her eyes gleaming. Marcus, ever the historian, suggested timing our move for Karen's next HOA meeting. Where rumors swirled, she'd push for expanded inspection powers to cement her control. My legal background gave me an edge, but I needed airtight preparation. I called my old law school friend, Sarah Nguyen, a property attorney with a knack for HOA disputes. Over a late-night Zoom, Sarah reviewed my findings, bylaws, financials, property records, and grinned. Karen's built a house of cards, she said. One public misstep, and it collapses. If she calls 911 to escalate her authority, you've got her. Sarah drafted a cease and desist letter I could present if Karen tried another inspection, but we agreed to hold it until the perfect moment. The real game changer was Ryan. At 18, he was already a skilled 911 operator, trained to stay calm under pressure. I explained the plan to him carefully, emphasizing he'd need to stay professional. If Karen calls 911 about me or our house, I said, you'll hear it first. Just document the call and let me know. Ryan nodded, a spark of pride in his eyes. I've got your back, Dad. We learned from Marcus that Karen's HOA meeting was set for next Saturday, where she proposed new rules requiring emergency access to homes, code for her master key obsession. It was the ideal stage for her to overplay her hand, especially since Ellen's Dropbox revealed Karen had been logging complaints about non-compliant residents, including me, to justify her power grab. I suspected she'd try another stunt at my house to rally her loyalists, maybe even call 911 to paint me as obstructive. That's where Ryan came in. His dispatch center covered Willow Creek, and he'd monitor calls during his shift, which conveniently overlapped the meeting. If Karen dialed 911, Ryan would handle it, staying within protocol, but ensuring every word was recorded. Those recordings, Sarah confirmed, were public records I could request to expose Karen's abuse of emergency services. To keep Karen off balance, I played the compliant neighbor, paying her $300 fine for refusing inspection to avoid suspicion. Meanwhile, Ellen quietly spread word among trusted residents about Karen's real estate dealings, priming them for the meeting. Marcus dug up a 1990s HOA charter clause requiring 75% homeowner approval for new access rules, something Karen hadn't mentioned, banking on apathy to ram her proposal through. Everything was set. Karen would walk in her own trap, thinking her clipboard and fake key gave her untouchable power. As I looked at Ryan, who was practicing his dispatch scripts to stay sharp, I felt a surge of confidence. This wasn't just my fight, it was ours, and with my legal know-how and Ryan's steady voice on the line, we were ready to bring Karen's reign crashing down. Karen Marshall must have sensed the tide turning, because her attacks ramped up with a vengeance. Days after our doorstep clash, violation notices flooded my mailbox. $154 unapproved curtains visible through my living room window, $200 for a non-compliant porch light I'd installed months ago without issue. She even sent a notice to Ryan, accusing him of unauthorized parking for leaving his car in our own driveway overnight. It was absurd, but the message was clear. Karen was tightening her grip, and my family was her prime target. At the community center, she started a whisper campaign, telling neighbors I was a troublemaker, stirring up lawsuits to tank property values. Her allies parroted the line, shooting me icy glares at the grocery store. My blood boiled, especially when Ryan came home upset after a classmate repeated the rumors. Karen's bullying didn't stop at me. Ellen Carter got a $100 fine for a faded house number, despite hers matching every other home on her street. Marcus Reed was cited for excessive library signage at his community archive, a plaque unchanged for a decade. These petty jabs backfired spectacularly. Outraged neighbors, fed up with Karen's vendettas, started reaching out to Ellen, swelling our secret coalition to 20 households. The more Karen swung, the more she united us. Then came her boldest misstep. One evening, she called 911, claiming my unapproved porch light was a safety hazard blinding drivers. Unbeknownst to her, Ryan was on duty. Willow Creek, 911. This is Ryan. He answered, his voice steady as he logged her rant about that Harper man's defiance. She had no idea my son was listening, documenting every word of her frivolous call. The tension was palpable as the HOA meeting loomed. Karen's notices and rumors were meant to scare us into submission, but they only fueled our resolve. Ryan showed me the 911 call log, his jaw tight. "She's wasting emergency lines, Dad," he said. I nodded, feeling the weight of her actions. Karen thought she could intimidate us into silence, but her overreach was unraveling her control. Each fine, each call, pushed more neighbors to our side, setting the stage for her downfall. The anticipation was electric. We were ready to turn her own tactics against her. The Willow Creek HOA meeting was Karen Marshall's stage, and she played her part with gusto. Held in the community center's auditorium, the room buzzed with nearly 50 residents, many drawn by Karen's promise to secure our standards with new inspection rules. She stood at the podium, her blonde bob gleaming under the lights, pitching her emergency access policy, a thinly veiled excuse to legitimize her master key. I sat in the back, my attorney friend Sarah Nguyen beside me, waiting for the moment we'd planned. Midway through her PowerPoint, Karen's phone buzzed. She excused herself, stepping to the hall, her voice rising. "This is an emergency," she snapped into the phone. My pulse raced. Ryan was on duty at the 911 dispatch center, and I knew he'd be listening. On the line, Ryan's voice was steady. Willow Creek 911. This is Operator Ryan Harper. How can I assist? Karen, oblivious, ranted about my unauthorized lock preventing her compliance check at my house, demanding police intervention. It's a security breach, she insisted, her voice shrill. Ryan, calm as ever, logged every word, noting her address, my address, and her claim of a master key. Back in the auditorium, I slipped out to take Ryan's text. She called. Got it recorded. It was time. I nodded to Sarah, and we re-entered as Karen returned to the podium, smugly announcing she'd handled a non-compliant resident. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others skeptical. I stood, raising my hand. Karen, care to explain your 911 call just now? Her eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. That's HOA business, she said, waving me off. I held up a copy of the HOA bylaws and a police report I'd file via Ryan's dispatch system. Actually, it's a legal business, I said, my voice carrying years of courtroom authority. You called 911 claiming a master key gives you access to my home. My son, Ryan Harper, the 911 operator, recorded your call. There's no such key in the bylaws, and your attempt to enter my property is trespassing. Sarah stepped forward, presenting the bylaws inspection clause, which required 48-hour notice and consent. The crowd gasped, whispers erupting. Karen's face flushed crimson. This is outrageous, she sputtered. I have authority to... I cut her off, projecting the 911 call log on the screen, courtesy of Ryan's quick work. Her voice echoed. I need police at 124 Maple Lane. Harper's lock is blocking my key. The room fell silent, then exploded in murmurs. You abused emergency services, I said, turning to the crowd. And you've bullied this community for years. Sarah added, we've filed charges for attempted trespassing, and the state HOA board is reviewing your conduct. Residents turned to Karen, their faces a mix of shock and betrayal. One woman shouted, You tried to break into his house? Karen stammered, her clipboard trembling in her hands, her authority crumbling like dry sand. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, Karen fled the podium, her allies trailing sheepishly. Ryan texted me, You okay, Dad? I smiled, replying, Better than ever. The crowd's outrage turned to applause as I promised to push for fair HOA reforms. Karen's reign was over, exposed by her own hubris and Ryan's quiet heroism. It was a victory not just for us, but for every neighbor she'd tried to control. Karen Marshall's empire unraveled faster than a cheap sweater. Within days of her humiliating 911 call, exposed by Ryan's steady voice at the dispatch center, she resigned as HOA president, citing personal reasons. The truth was less flattering. The state HOA board launched an investigation into her misuse of funds, prompted by Ellen Carter's financial records showing thousands funneled to her allies' businesses. Karen tried to fight back, filing a defamation suit against me. But Sarah Nguyen, my attorney friend, got it dismissed with a single motion, citing the public 911 recording as undeniable evidence. Karen's real estate firm, Willow Properties, crumbled under scrutiny, and her luxury sedan vanished from her driveway, replaced by a for sale sign that lingered for months. Her attempts to rally her loyalists fizzled as neighbors turned their backs, finally seeing her for the bully she was. Willow Creek began to breathe again. I worked with Ellen and Marcus to draft a new HOA charter, mandating transparent budgets and open meetings where every resident could vote. We replaced Karen's cronies with a diverse board, including Sophia Lopez, a nurse who'd been fined for her kids' chalk drawings. Ryan, my 18-year-old hero, led free home safety workshops, teaching neighbors about secure locks and emergency preparedness. His 911 expertise earning him a standing ovation at the community center. One evening, as families thanked us, Mr. Patel shaking my hand, Mrs. Kim hugging Ryan, I saw pride in my son's eyes. Later, on our porch, Ryan leaned against the railing, the sunset casting a warm glow. Dad, I'm proud we protected our home, he said softly, his voice thick. I pulled him into a hug, thinking of Emily. We did it together, kid, I whispered, my heart full. The community's gratitude was overwhelming. Neighbors who'd once avoided me now waved warmly, their kids biking freely without fear of fines. The playground got new swings, funded by reallocated HOA dues. Karen's final desperate move, a petition to reinstate her access rules, was laughed off at a town hall. Willow Creek wasn't just healed. It was reborn, a place where fairness trumped fear. As I watched Ryan joke with neighbors at a block party, I knew we'd not only defeated a tyrant, but built something stronger, a home where my son could thrive, and a community that stood taller for it. This fight was about more than Karen Marshall's fake master key. It was about our right to feel safe in our own home, to stand up when someone tries to steal your peace. Ryan and I took on a bully who thought rules were her weapon, but we showed her that knowledge, allies, and courage are stronger. The lesson? Know your rights, build a team, and never let a tyrant hide behind a clipboard. Willow Creek is proof. When you challenge unchecked power, you can rebuild something better. If your HOA or any bully is overstepping, don't stay silent. Drop your story in the comments. Let's inspire each other to fight back and reclaim our spaces. Together, we can turn battles into victories, just like Ryan and I did.